Welcome to Mom and Mind, a podcast about maternal mental health from conception to pregnancy and postpartum. Real stories from moms and family members who have made it from struggling to wellness, and interviews with experts and advocates who work for moms and families to get the help they need. We discuss very real struggles that can sometimes be hard to hear, but these are stories that need to be told so that moms and families can know that healing is possible. This podcast is meant to offer information and awareness and is not a replacement for treatment by a professional. Thank you for being with us today. This episode touches on topics that may be sensitive for some listeners.
Welcome back to Mom and Mind. I'm your host, Dr. Kat. On this episode, we're going to be talking with Jessica A. Walker about maternal mental health in diverse communities and cultivating relationships with African American mothers, the challenges that Black mothers face as a barrier to treatment. I'm really excited to have Jessica on with us today. She is a Joyologist, a researcher, and a Your New Media producer, and works as a president of Jaw Research Institute, an online business education institute and social advocacy media enterprise. Jessica is a standing contributor to California Task Force on the Status of Maternal Mental Health with 2020 Mom, speaker for Stop Stigma Sacramento, a multimedia project which aims to reduce stigma and discrimination that face individuals living with mental illness, a NAMI California peer support workshop facilitator, and so many more things that you can find out about her on her website, and we'll get to that at the end. She's a mother of 6, a wife, a dancer, a sister, a daughter. Daily, she suffers from a lack of sleep and dehydration, among other things, but she wouldn't have it any other way. She is the author of the forthcoming book and online course, Happily Depressed: The Work, set to be released in 2017. Thanks so much for being here, Jessica. I'm so happy to talk to you today.
Thanks for having me. Yeah. I'm really excited about this podcast.
Thank you. And I'm happy to have you on and your perspective. You do so much work in your community and work to help moms. And I really want our listeners to have your perspective on things that we can do as providers. There are so many gaps in terms of getting help to moms in the African American community, in the Black community, for women of color, to be able to get them help that feels supportive to them and is culturally relevant and sensitive and meaningful. And I really want to understand from your perspective and hear your experience around that.
Sure.
So I'd like to start off with asking you about the work that you do and how you got into this specialty and working in maternal mental health.
Yeah, so I got into this specialty because it was something that I needed. Just to give you a very short story, I struggled with postpartum depression for about I want to say 5 years or maybe even more than that. I was basically a zombie, so you hear the word zombie, I was a zombie. Yeah. I woke up, I got dressed, and really not dressed. Like I just literally put on some sandals and some sweatpants.
Yeah.
And I walked around my house and I got the kids to go to school and I was just like, and I'd go back in my room, go to sleep, wake up again, pick up the kids, do their homework with them, fix them dinner, and go back into zombie state. Mm-hmm. So I went like that for a couple of years, really. And I was told that I had postpartum depression by a doctor. I was like, no, I don't. I'm Black. We don't get depression. You crazy. I say, you crazy. It really was that. I was like, you crazy. We don't get depression. I don't know what you're talking about. Because in my community and in my neighborhood, really, everyone around me kind of had that same attitude. So how do you know if you're depressed if everyone else around you is depressed, right? You don't really see happy people except for on TV. And you just figure, it's an imaginary land. So anyhow, I went through that. I was very functional. Like I said, I was able to get my kids dressed, take care of them. I volunteered at the school. I held on to a couple of jobs during that time. I was actually a manager of one of the highest performing stores in my district. And I was just lost. I was in that state of just existing and I wasn't really living. Mm-hmm. So with the birth of my 6th child, something had to change. My son came into my room one day and I sat in my room. It was really dark. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The Ring, right? The Ring. The girl comes out. I was the Black version of that. I was the Black version with the braids. It's like stereo stuff hitting your brother, stuff hitting your sister. That whole thing. And my son came into my room, which was my well. And, I kept it really dark. I just watched reality shows all day. It was really, really dark in my room. And my son came in and he said, Mom, why are you always sad?
Oh.
The look on his face. I mean, if I could have turned into stone, I would have. I was like, what are you talking about? As you can hear, I'm very bubbly. I'm like, hi, what are you?
Yeah.
So I had to come to reality and understand that I was wearing a mask. And whenever I went out, I would crack jokes and I'd laugh, but my appearance was always really messy. I really didn't care anymore about my life. And when my son brought that to my attention, I said, he knows. I would cry in the shower at night. I would, I did everything I could to hide my true feelings from everyone, even my husband. My husband kind of knew something was wrong, but at the same time, he didn't know what to do about it. So my son coming up with that woke me to the fact that he was, privy of it. And I said,
how old was he at that time?
He was 7, I believe, 7 years old. And it's so funny. He's my little soldier. I'd almost miscarried him and he survived through that. And now he was saving me. So it's pretty awesome. You never think your kids will be the ones to save you, but they end up becoming, those ones that are there for you. So anyhow, he did that. And I said, you know what? I looked in the mirror. And at that point in time, I said, this will never happen again. I will not allow this to interfere with my child's life. Well, it had been, right? Because I've been sitting in my well, but I was so busy in my well, I hadn't really paid attention to everything else. I figured as long as I got them to school, they did their homework, they were getting good grades, the light bill was paid. I was doing my job, but I wasn't fully there. So he did that and I woke up to it. I said, I'm not going to allow this to affect him. It's not his job to worry about me. It's my job to worry about him. He's supposed to just be a happy kid. So I went and did some research. And during this time, I don't know if postpartum progress was really, I guess they were out, but maybe I just wasn't aware of them. I wasn't taking a real notice of it. But I recall going to the doctor with my daughter after doing research about depression and stuff. And I'm like, why isn't anyone talking about this? Why isn't anyone saying anything? And seeing a poster in the bathroom of a hospital facility that I went to. And I was like, oh, I should call that number. So I called the number and it was like an automated system and I immediately hung up. And I was like, okay, I don't know why, but for some reason I just felt like it just wasn't right for me. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I started doing some research on it and I said, you know what, I'm going to start a group where women can come and just talk about their feelings and talk about what's happening. And I started blogging and come to find out I'm not that good of a blogger. I am horrible with grammar. It's so funny. I sent it to a news channel. No, it was a newspaper and they had a blog for moms. And I'm like, I want to blog for you guys. I have a blog. And they were like, your grammar is horrific.
Oh no. You have a lot of good things to say.
No, they were like, you have a great viewpoint. Your personality really shines through. However, you cannot write. And I was like, guess what? Yes, that's not where I'm supposed to go.
Right.
So, to make a long story short, I started a nonprofit organization after I started the groups and started meeting with women and seeing how prevalent this was, not only in communities of great depression or great stress, but also in communities where women have a lot of access to resources, So I started the nonprofit and it took off from there. I called it Mom and Me after meeting with a psychologist who I so happened to meet with for something else. Actually, it was something completely different, but she was like, you know what, you should call this. And I was like, should I call it Mom and Baby or Baby and Me and Mom and Baby? Everybody has this Mom and Me shops or Mom and Me groups and stuff. And then she said, no, call it Mom in Me because the mom is inside of you, but you're still a human being. You're still an individual and you're still a woman. And I said, yeah, it's the Mom in Me. That's a title. It's not who I am I'm not just Khalid's mom or Jacayla's mom, I have a name. My name is Jessica. So anyway, that was a long form story. Sorry, that was supposed to be short. It wasn't really short.
Oh no, don't worry about it. I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's really important for everyone to, we all have different journeys and, a lot of us who work and do advocacy and help moms in this field have gone through something ourselves or been really touched in a deep way by somebody who has. And all of our stories are important and all of the ways that we get to this work is important because we are on some level reflecting what other people are dealing with. And I think it's really important to hear your story and understand that, essentially you had a really, really, really hard time and you found a way through, and now it's that your experience empowers you. And that's brilliant.
Exactly. And now to use that empowerment to go out and help others, and then to, ultimately help physicians, which is not what I set out to do. Understand.
Well, right.
Yeah.
But everyone needs this information.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be really great to know from your perspective and your experience in the work that you're doing is what is unique about African-American mothers, the Black community, women of color during this period of time of pregnancy and postpartum, unique in terms of expectations and pressures, and also the strengths that they have as women and as a community. So if you could speak to that.
Well, that is
a lot.
Loaded. Yeah.
I just asked you a lot.
You're right there with me, Kat. Like, such a loaded question. Like, it's like, which one do I talk about first? I think the overarching view of all of this is the fact that racism is still very much alive, and it's very unfortunate.
Right.
It's the fact that we've come so far to get hit back again so far, it just pushes us right back again. What African-American women have to go through continuously on a daily basis is something that surpasses a lot of things that other nationalities might not have to deal with. It surpasses a lot of the perceptions, a lot of the stereotypes that are placed upon African-American women. So you asked me that, and I guess I can take this I talk about this in the book, as well as, in some of the webinars that I've provided. We really have this whole view, and I'm going to speak from my viewpoint and my viewpoint only as an African-American mother. You have so many different perceptions that, you take into your own view and then what's perceived of you. Mm-hmm. Even with breastfeeding, something that's as little and as natural, I think is natural, as breastfeeding, like we get our grandparents, our relatives, even community members, they're like, oh no, you can't, don't breastfeed that baby. That's nasty. So there are African-American groups that are now advocating for, Black women breastfeeding because we have those voices right from our own community. And then again, to go on the other end of that, we also have the stronghold of what's happened during slavery, moving into the civil rights movement. And then that still exists today that we see on social media all of the time, continuously, 24 hours a day. We are susceptible to those images every single day. And it's just, and it's 24 hours in our pocket, right? So with that, I just wanted to add on to the superwoman theory. So I talk about the superwoman theory. Superwoman theory is what's been handed down to us generation after generation. You think about it, in slavery, we weren't able to say, hey, you know what? I'm tired. I think I want to go sit down. It didn't happen, or I'm feeling a little depressed or under the weather right now. Can I take a day off? It just didn't happen. So all of that suppression has now been passed down and handed down generation after generation. You're told to just put on your big girl pants and just walk the walk. Put on your makeup and walk through whatever it is you're going through. And you're not taught to express your true feelings. Whereas now we are starting to advocate a lot more, which is kind of why I went into the media space with all of this and trying to socially advocate. Kat, when I had you on the show, what was that? Like almost a year.
It was almost a year.
Yeah, almost a year ago. Like I was so engrossed in, I have to produce shows or bring about change by using social media because it's such a big part of our daily lives. And how can we take out all this negative, or at least combat all the negativity that's out there with something positive?
Right.
So I hope I kind of answered at least one of those questions.
Right. And I think, as we were kind of talking before we got started, there are some really, really huge social, cultural, emotional, historical things happening now, and that have been happening, but are highlighted also through social media in a different way than has ever been. And I want to both address that, but also acknowledge that we need to spend another different separate episode discussing all of the impacts of the violence that that now all of us are seeing. Before it was maybe just seen in the neighborhood, but now all of us are seeing it. And we need to really, really maybe take a deeper dive into that topic and understand how that is affecting motherhood.
That's a whole nother podcast,
That's
a whole nother day.
Right. And absolutely, that will be addressed in a different episode. And it's such a big and heavy and important topic and reality to discuss. And, from what we've talked about is that for now, we want to focus on a little bit more general stuff, just in terms of expectations and pressures and strengths of moms during this time. And then also, cultural barriers and how can we help them? And so we'll get into the heavy stuff again.
Well, I think the overarching theme here is that this deserves really truthfully its own podcast. And I've been tinkering around back and forth about it, and it's number one, it's another thing to put on my plate, right? I really I advocate for wellness in life and in business. That's like my tagline, my motto. Mm-hmm. Don't live it, but advocate for it.
It's a constant. Yeah.
So it's like, do I really want to put something else on my plate? So if we have any listeners out there that want to take this on and want to be like the talent and be the podcasters, I am more than willing to show you how to do it and have you take on. But so that's the overarching theme, is that, it would take us another good hour or more to talk about that. But it's really focusing on what we can do right now to help the mothers that maybe either is pregnant or after pregnancy that are African American, and help them so that they can better help their children, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think getting back to what you were saying, so there are pressures, there are expectations within the community, but also there are strengths. And what are those strengths that moms are pulling on to get through? And what are the things that me as a provider or somebody else who's listening, and maybe an OB or a pediatrician or somebody who's listening, how can we be more supportive of making sure that, that the stigma is not there and that the moms are getting the mental health support that they deserve?
Okay, so I'll answer the strength question first. So the strength that African Americans hold is that it is just that word, right? It's the strength to endure, to go through all of the different obstacles that we go through on a daily basis, and really sometimes hourly, sometimes every minute of the day, which if you really think about that, even from a perspective of a provider, that's a lot. Be traumatized over and over and over again. It's known as the wound that never closes. To add a little story to that, and I kind of tinker back and forth with whether or not I want to talk about this, but I feel like I need to. This morning, I went to the store, and I talk about perceived racism a lot. And if you guys want, you can go ahead and Google perceived racism and kind of find out more about it. Kathleen Tackett, which I work with, Paralysis Press, does a lot of work in that, talking about perceived racism. But perceived racism happens every single day. So for me, this morning, I went to the grocery store and I stopped to get, I know this is bad, a donut and chocolate milk. So
don't worry.
I was just in one of those moods, and I was like, I just need a donut, Yeah. So I got a donut and chocolate milk, and I'm going through the little automated line because I really didn't feel like talking to anyone. So I didn't go through the cashier. And I scanned my stuff and I got ready to pay, and I had my money out, and the machine wouldn't take my $20 bill. So I said, oh man, now I got to talk to somebody. So I went over to the little lady and I said, hey, the machine won't take my $20, and it wouldn't take it to a point where it just took like the beginning part of it. Like it wasn't like it went all the way in and came back out. It just wouldn't take the beginning. So I'm like, okay, whatever. So that was frustrating me. So I walked over to her and I said, hey, can I get change? Because the machine won't take my $20. She said, yeah, sure. She checks the money, which I'm okay with. Fine. Okay, yeah, need to make sure it's legit. Totally fine. She checks it again. She checks it a third time. I'm like, okay. The $20 is valid. Believe me. All I want is a donut and a chocolate milk. If I'm really, not trying to get over here. So she gets me to change, and I go over to the machine, and she goes, well, the money doesn't work if it's fraudulent.
Wow.
And I said, okay. So I could have reacted in several different ways. I chose to ignore it. I chose to just walk out of the store. But when I got in the car, I really, truthfully, I just started to cry.
Right.
And I just felt so heavy because I felt like number one, I probably make more than but that's besides the point. I have clients that are probably paying double your salary. But, I really just got to a point where I was like, when will it be that I'm just a human being and I'm just trying to pay for my things. Like, when will it be that I'm not trying to do anything? I don't need when will that happen? So, it wasn't the fact that happened that day at that time. It was that it happens a lot.
Right.
It's every time that I go to the grocery store, it's, the person in front of me, the customer in front of me, that's usually Caucasian because I live in a predominantly suburban area. It's taco night. How are you? Your total's $8.95. And then when I get up there, it's like, that'll be $3.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm
Right.
a total nuisance to even be in your line. And here I am paying your salary by buying something from your store.
Right.
So I have to counteract with, how are you today? It's a great day, isn't it? And I shouldn't have to do that. It's that perceived thought that I'm somehow lesser or that I don't deserve the same service. So nonetheless, Safeway will definitely be getting an email from me. But
That's right.
But,
Right. But in terms of that what you've had to endure has become a strength of yours to not engage at that level of behavior that they're giving you.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's what you're describing in terms of strengths of mothers, strengths of Black mothers in this society.
Keep fighting, right? To keep fighting, and not necessarily in a physical sense, but and the fact of it's all in the mindset. It really truthfully is. It's all that subconscious layer, that unconscious layer that we have to continue to thrive through. Really, any physical fight is as nothing compared to a mental fight.
Sure.
So now to answer the providers, to stop stigma, it's really, it's what I do with Stop Stigma Sacramento, the whole media campaign that we have around just making sure that you are aware. I think that's the biggest piece is when you have those, because we all have them, when we have those things that kind of creep up on us and we're starting to judge someone or we're starting to put them in a certain category or that stigma comes up, to be aware of it and go, wait a minute, This is a human being. So
how would you describe those stigmas as related to specifically to pregnant and postpartum moms of color?
Oh, you must be on welfare. You must be, oh, well, it can't be that bad. Or, what's another one? You're making it out to be more than it has to be. What's another stigma that usually is a big one?
So on that level, then, I'm just taking that a step further. I can imagine moms not being taken seriously,
Exactly.
moms feeling discounted, moms feeling not heard, and then therefore discouraged. Why bother?
Exactly. You're hitting it right on the nail. And it's more or less, oh, you Black, Black people always complain or, or you're always angry. That's a good one. That's a big one. It's like, you're mad all the time. And it's like, well, not necessarily. There may be something underlying that. And really, so looking at that and just understanding and making yourself aware of when you do it, take a step back and go, this is an individual. So she can't be classified with any other mother, any other person that I've come in contact with, and really doing something to turn that around. So what I advise physicians to do within my class, the online class that I'm currently creating, is to compliment them, because how many times, if just a human being, we don't receive a lot of compliments. We're so mean towards each other, so complimenting her on her shoes or her clothing or just that's a nice color you have on, finding something to break down that barrier so you're able to communicate. Right.
In terms of the mom, then, if I'm trying to think in terms of a mom's perspective of or a postpartum mom of color, Black mom, who's going and maybe has had a lot of the experiences that you just described, is going in to get help from people that she potentially either has a hard time gauging, like, are these people on my side? Can I trust this provider? Do they have my best interest in mind? How would you advise them to navigate a potentially difficult situation or system to get the help that they need?
So for the mother, so it's so funny. I started this work because I really wanted to talk to moms. I was like, I need to reach the mothers, and I kind of got thrown into this whole African-American mother because I am African-American mother. But I really wanted to look at it as just the fact that universally, all mothers, I don't care what country, what culture, whatever you go through, we just want the best for our kids.
Right.
And we want to see our kids succeed. Right. Now, what we do a lot is we put their needs above our own. And it's so hard for us to advocate for ourselves and say, you know what? I'm going to take my child in for a well check, and they're well, but am I well? Am I okay? And so changing that conversation to say that don't use the word selfish. It's not in our vocabulary because you had a kid, like you carried the kid 9 months. That's not it. You're not selfish whatsoever.
Right.
So really turning that whole conversation around to be that I need to take care of myself so I can better take care of my child. And that's why I set out on this journey. I understood that in order to stop bullying, in order to stop childhood obesity, in order to stop adverse childhood experiences, which are ACEs, the childhood trauma that is going on, start with the chicken before the egg. Start with the mother. Let's educate the mother. Let's help her understand that maybe she didn't have the best parents, but that's okay. She can be a great parent.
Mm-hmm.
So really truthfully changing that whole conversation around to being, I can take care of myself and not feel bad about it. And I can advocate for myself and say, hey, I don't feel good today. And that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to be perfect. I'm a human being. That's why, Mom and Me and the Jaw Research Institute was born. Jessica Advocates Wellness is the Jaw Research Institute. All the research that I've done on depression, on mental states, on just media, on social aspects, it all comes back around to the mother. We're the head of everything. And I'm sorry, dads that are listening, but I think they understand it as well because they came from a woman, mothers. And it's a large weight to bear. It's really heavy on our shoulders. So sometimes we end up, like I said, putting the needs of others before our own, but we have to understand that our needs are just as important.
Absolutely. More. That's really important to highlight. And that's something I see across the board. All moms have difficulty caring for themselves. But I think because of all of the factors that you've already described and some other ones that, that are there, I think there's an added layer of difficulty for Black moms.
Oh, yeah.
Because of all of those other pressures that...
Oh, definitely. Well, Black moms are in their own category. They definitely are. And to give you a little bit of a visual, we get it from all sides. So we get it from our own people that tell us to do certain things in a certain way, or you're not cool, or you're not quote unquote Black enough if you don't do things in a certain way. And then you get it from our counterparts, of different ethnicities that say, oh, well, you're, I see that you're this color, so you must react in X, Y, and Z way. Mm-hmm. And then you get it from the schools. Oh, the Black moms here, the frightened look, the look of, oh my gosh, what are you going to do? And it's like, I'm just here to volunteer, So it really comes from all different, and we can't even talk about government, So, yeah, that's a whole other podcast itself again. Right. So, you really do, you get it from all ends of the spectrum. And then you come to terms, and then you look yourself in the mirror and you go, what do I need to do to be okay? Like that whole incident with me in the store, it's like, okay, what do I need to do to be okay? And to advise any mothers that are listening, any mothers really, but African-American mothers specifically, because I think they would resonate a lot with this. Music is like our outlet. And that's not to say that only us, because I know me and you talked about that as well. But music is our kind of way of getting over that. And I think it goes all the way back to when we had drum sets, during slavery and, all that good stuff. I mean, we can really go really deep with that. But it really has to do with our neurochemicals, the serotonin, the dopamine, all that stuff that kind of gets activated in those pleasure centers that gets activated when we hear music. And that's with any nationality across the board. But I think in the African American, if you go to a urban community, usually you will hear at some point in time music blasting from somewhere. It could be from a car, from a house, or, you'll hear music blasting. And it really is a defense mechanism. It's a way for us to get lost in the music that right in that time and in that space, we can feel good about something. So I really advocate for that a lot. So find your jam.
I find it literally, yeah.
Find your jam.
Absolutely. I think from highlighting some of the things you're saying, self-care is not selfish. Really checking in with yourself about what do I need in order to feel okay or get through the day, or at least care myself as much as my kids. And one way to do that is through music and being connected in that way.
Yeah.
What are some other ways that you suggest and advocate?
Meditation or prayer, big, huge one. Deep breathing is a big one for me. I like to get in the shower and just have, I like the water hot. So whatever your thing is,
Right.
But, just turn the water on, and it's something about the water, having calming music on, and just taking deep breaths in and out. It's just so relaxing, and it helps me. And I just kind of go over my day when I'm in the shower, and I just kind of rehash, okay, what triggered me today? Why am I upset about it? Just really checking in. In that book, I do a lot of check-ins. Okay, well, let's check in. And, how can you check in with yourself? How can you make others aware that if you, I put that in the book as well, if you see me do this, then get my toolbox. I call it a mental health toolbox, but really it's just whatever you put your little reminders in. It could be your wallet. It could be whatever, you want to do as your mental health toolbox. And you pull out those reminders, something that makes you happy, something, your favorite music, your poems, deep breathing exercises. It could be something that's just bookmarking a YouTube channel that makes you laugh, or a YouTube video, or just this podcast, just listening to other women and going, oh, wow,
right.
My life is bad, but it's not as bad as that. I can overcome and she overcame.
Right. Oh, absolutely. There is a lot of healing in knowing that you're not alone.
Exactly. So it doesn't have to be from that context. That was a little bit of a joke, but
yeah. Oh, no. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, just, having those things that you can turn to, when other people kind of see you, as like, I told my husband, if you see me and it's been 24 hours since I've laughed, there's a problem, something's wrong, because I laugh a lot. Mm-hmm. So if it's 24 hours that goes by, then I need for you to check in with me. I need for you to sit me down and just find out what's going on, because it's so easy for me to just be going that I don't notice it. And I need for him to kind of be held accountable and have that other person, that support person, is really huge and important.
Right. So finding somebody who you can, it sounds like for you in your process, I think what you're stating is kind of what you've outlined in your upcoming book, is that you really sit down, take some time to just reflect on yourself and what works for you and what doesn't, and have that list somewhere, have that maybe a literal toolbox somewhere of things that you can use, and then also find somebody that you trust, who will have your back, and can bring them in on it, give them clues, advocate for yourself with other people.
And that can be a therapist. So let me just throw that out there. Yeah, it can be a doctor, but find the right one. You don't have to stay, you're not stuck to any person. You don't owe them anything. Yes. So if you don't like them, keep it moving. Say, hey, you know what? This relationship is not going to work for me. Right. Break it off and keep going. It's like a bad date, right?
Yeah.
You don't stay dating the guy if he is like, you're suck. You're not good. You move on.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Please do that with therapists. I've heard too many stories of people staying with therapists that didn't.
Yeah, it helps not you nor them.
Okay, so we've covered quite a few topics today, all of which could have their own separate separate episode. And I really want to point that out and just state, this is, on some level, this is part of a continuing conversation.
Right.
We're not going to be able to address all and everything in, 30, 40 minutes. But these are some of the highlights. These are some of the real struggles that are affecting moms of color, Black moms, African-American moms who are pregnant, who are postpartum, and have these additional layers of stress that they are trying to manage, which also, the higher the stress, the more chance the birth outcomes are lower, or that the health outcomes of mom and baby are compromised, the higher the level of stress. And so I think, the things that we've been discussing and talking about are so, so, so important for providers, anybody who is working with a mom of color, African-American mom, and Black mom, who in their, offices, or even advocating, or any contact you have, is to understand that the layers of stress that they are dealing with, if you are not of the same culture, the layers of stress that they're dealing with might be much higher than you think, and to be supporting them to have a better birth outcomes for themselves and their children.
Definitely. If nothing else, for the babies, and I have a campaign called Save the Babies, but that's, 207 African-American babies have died due to perinatal causes here in Sacramento. And that's That's shocking to me, and that has to stop. That's just due to their mother. They haven't even had the chance to come out and experience any of the ills of the world as of yet. It's just due to the amount of stress. No baby should be born with the amount of stress of an adult. That's ridiculous.
Right. There's a lot of work to do, a lot. And you are doing a really, really great work in your community and to try and help. And I know of like in my community down here in San Bernardino County, we have a Black infant mental health program. And there are smallish pockets of people who are really advocating hard, but there's so many layers of challenges here.
Definitely.
But it takes all of us, at least, if nothing else coming away from just this episode, is be aware, have a sense of awareness that, that we really need to be taking care of these moms and their babies. And, there's so much more to do. If anyone is interested in finding ways more to do, Jessica, I'm sure you would be available to consult on, how in their communities they can be continuing.
So let's continue the conversation for sure. You guys can all visit bit.ly/JAWMIM. So it's Jaw, Mom, and Mine. So it's bit.ly/JAWMIM. And if you go there, what you'll be able to do is to sign up to be a part of this work. And you can either sign up to, if you just want a copy of the book when it comes out, or if you want to find out more information, if you just want to help out, if you just want to leave just a basic comment about the show, you can definitely do that there. And I'll definitely share that with you, Kat, as well. But I definitely want to continue the conversation because it's so important, the work that you do. And that's our Black infant health program here as well. I've been just really truthfully trying to advocate and push. Let's get on social media. Let's, advocate for these women. Let's reach them in their pockets, literally, because they're using these mediums. So I'm really, really proud. And I thank you for creating the content that you have created here and being a broadcaster and advocating for this, because this is where we're going to reach the people.
Right. That's my hope. And thank you for acknowledging that. I really am hopeful that, in all of the topics that we address, that these are ways that people can feel heard and feel understood, and to know that there are people out there advocating for them, so that I don't have to hear anymore, like, why didn't anyone tell me about this? Nobody gave me the support. Well, there are people out there, but we are just like screaming from our mountaintops. And Jessica, I know you are for sure. To try and get the word out there. So it really does take all of us to share your information, to share any episode of even of this podcast or Jessica of your work that you feel like a mother could resonate with or a provider should be hearing, so that, that this spreads and people know that there's help available.
Definitely.
And this isn't the only conversation we're having. It's not like, oh, okay, check that one off the list. No, this is like... This is an ongoing conversation. It's integral to making sure that moms and babies are healthy, is to discuss the cultural factors that impact their access to health and wellness and peace of mind for themselves and within their community. So I thank you immensely for your knowledge and your wisdom. And
girl, thank you. The media is the way to reach them. He who holds the media, this guy told me that one time on my show, he who holds the media owns the world. So if we could get more of us out in the media and utilizing it for good, then guess what? We'll have a happier world.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much for your wisdom, and we'll talk again.
All right. Talk to you soon.
By joining us today and listening, you're a part of the growing community of people who are aware and concerned for mothers and families during this beautiful and sometimes very difficult time of life. Please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and review this free podcast so that Mom and Mine can be found by moms, families, and providers who will benefit from hearing our talks. If you or someone you know is having a hard time, help is available. Please look for resources for help at momandmine.com, where you will also find links and information from today's episode. Thank you for listening and being a part of the Mom and Mine community.